Let's give it up for the band. Ladies and gentlemen, this is indeed another great day to be a Panther. We are so excited to introduce to you our new men's basketball coach. I'm excited to do that because you'll learn very quickly that he'll be an incredibly effective leader to take this program to the next level. And I can't wait to, couldn't wait last night, couldn't sleep. Wanted to be here to get above the noise and to move on and talk about our great work. Let me tell you about the process first. This was a highly coveted job for sure. And in fact, in the last group of candidates, the final group of candidates we had, 4 were sitting head coaches at Division I programs who frequented the NCAA tournament. Of those, 3 were sitting head coaches of Power 5 conference schools. Kevin Stallings was one of the first to be interviewed, and it was then, it became very apparent to me after that interview that he was the standard for the others to rise to. And obviously, at the end of that, nobody met the qualifications and the connection that Coach Stallings had, and couldn't be more excited. Harken back to about a week ago for y'all when we had the press conference and the vacancy was available, and we talked about what we were looking for. And what we were looking for was somebody that undoubtedly would run a program with a high level of integrity and character, and for sure we have our man in that regard. We were looking for a coach who had a connection with his student athletes, and if you look at Twitter and what the student athletes that he's coached are saying, you would know that there's a great relationship there. We talked about a coach that could recruit his tail off, and we think about what Kevin's recruiting tools were at including a very small pool at Vanderbilt. He has been exceptional in recruiting the ACC footprint as well as nationally, to the tune of 8 NBA draft picks, 3 in 1 year in 2012, and 1 pending even this year that will be a first-round draft pick potentially. Recruiting is obviously the lifeblood of what we do, and he brings that to the table. We talked about finding a coach who would bring a fun up-tempo style of play. When you talk to those who know, the experts, Kevin is counted among the very best in the nation at formulating an offense around the talent that he has and maximizing that. Without question, one of the best offensive minds in the country, and certainly a fun style of play to go along with that. We wanted a coach that would bring the academic piece, and one thing you'll know about Coach Kevin Stallings is he is a competitor, without question. He also takes great pride, and it's very important for him for the student athletes to graduate. You see that in his record. He's a winning coach, the winningest coach in Vanderbilt history. We can't be more excited to have him leading our ship. When I first met him and we talked, one of the first questions he asked me was about the lay of the land, and I asked him, why Pitt? And he said, can you get to the Final Four at Pitt? I said, absolutely. He said, I'm in. That's very, very important to him. It's very important to us. So with that, without further ado, please welcome your new head men's basketball coach, Kevin Stallings. Before that happens, my assignment, get up for a minute. Oh, sorry. I told you guys if I screwed this up to let me know. We're getting a photo op. Stallings jersey, we'll get that in the middle. Photo. We got it?
Just please don't ask me to put it on.
Turn it around. All right. There. All right. Great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's obviously my pleasure to be here. I would like to begin by thanking Chancellor Gallagher and Scott here for giving me this opportunity. I guess I would like to start by letting everyone know that my first exposure to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania came in the spring of 1978. As a high school player, I was selected to play in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette Dapper Dan All-Star Game. I can only hope that my tenure here as the basketball coach goes a little bit better than my success that night in the game. Okay? I'm humbled, I'm thankful, I'm appreciative, and most of all, I'm very excited to be the new basketball coach at the University of Pittsburgh. My goals as we enter this new era is to have a program that our administration looks at with pride on and off the court, teams that our fans find exciting and entertaining, and players whose experience will be rewarding and life-altering. One of the things that I'm most excited about is to get to know the people of Pittsburgh. The pride that exists in this city is evident and far-reaching. My family and I look forward to being a part of it and learning firsthand what that pride actually feels like and means. Speaking of family, please let me introduce my three favorite women in the entire world. My wife, Lisa. You want to raise your hand there, Lisa, or stand up even?
Stand. Please stand.
My daughter, Alexa, and my other daughter, Jordan. I'm very proud of them, and anyone that knows me will tell you that it begins and ends with me, with family. We're not complete here as the Stallings team, however, as my son Jacob and his wife Amy Beth could not be here today. I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank Vanderbilt University, their fans, and most importantly, all of those wonderful men that I coached there the past 17 years. You'll find out I love my players. I will forever cherish the memories that were made there and the relationships that will last a lifetime. And I honestly hope, and I really mean this, that this is the last day, the last time that I coach here, that the day is more about me than it is about the players that I coach. Our program has always been, is, and will always be about those players. I was very fortunate to be able to meet with our returning team a few minutes ago, and no matter how well the rest of my day goes, I can assure you that that will be my highlight. I was energized by their energy. I was fascinated and impressed with their togetherness and closeness, and I couldn't be more excited to get out here on this court with them as soon as the rules will allow for. It's the development of the players, the quality of their experience, their successes and failures, and yes, I think it's okay to let kids fail. I think it's okay for them to fail because I think that's a necessary part of life lessons. But most of all, I'm looking forward to the process of readying them for success in life. My goal is that our program is always viewed in a much bigger light than just basketball. And our players will not only succeed in the classroom, but they will achieve in the classroom. We will treat people in our program the way we want to be treated, and that's fairly and honestly. And we will honor, and I mean we will honor, the privilege of being a part of Pitt basketball, and we will not take that for granted. I do want you to know that I'm extremely upset with Jamie Dixon. I'm going to let that settle in just for a second, because he did such a great job here that I've got a terribly tough act to follow. Seriously, his coaches, his teams, and he have set the bar very, very high. Our goal, obviously, is to continue that standard of excellence with an eye on trying to do more and on trying to take the next step. Scott asked me, he stole a little bit of my thunder because it's right here in my notes. He asked me in the interview process why I wanted to be the coach at Pitt. And just like he told the story, I responded to his question with a question. I said, can you get to a Final Four in men's basketball there? And he said, yes, we can. And I said, well, that's why I want to be your coach. And I believe with all of my heart that if all of our forces, and I mean if all of our forces are pulling in the same direction, and that starts with administrative vision and support, to all of our support people doing their jobs to the best of their abilities, to the recruiting efforts of my staff and I, to the wonderful fans of Pitt basketball and my soon-to-be friends, all those fabulous members of the Oakland Zoo, and most importantly, players that are willing to sacrifice for the good of the team and play with incredible energy and effort, then I believe we can make that happen. Our teams will play hard, we'll play fast, and every coach gets up in a press conference and says, we're going to play fast and we're going to play exciting. But you can look at my teams and how we play fast. That's how I see the game. I see it fast, I like it fast, the fans like it fast, players like it fast. Why wouldn't we play fast? But more importantly, we'll play for each other. That, I hope, is an absolute trademark of what Pitt basketball looks like. And I can only hope that we embody the spirit of this city, like the Steelers and Pirates teams that I watched when I was a kid. Lynn Swann and John Stallworth and Terry Bradshaw and Franco Harris and Rocky Blyer and Mean Joe Green and L.C. Greenwood and Mel Blount and Jack Ham and Jack Lambert and Willie Stargell and Al Oliver and Richie Hebner and Manny Sanguian and Nelson Briles and Steve Blass and the incomparable Roberto Clemente. I hope that we can put teams out there that people can appreciate like I appreciated even as a kid those teams. I look forward to working with and coaching this team. Guys, I was inspired by our 30 or 40 minutes that we had together. And I hope that sooner rather than later, they consider me their coach. Again, it's my privilege to be here as your coach today. And I think we can all look forward to a lot of fun and hopefully even more success. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody has. There we go.
Scott, this question's for you. It can't be any secret to you how this is being received publicly, how it's being received by the Pitt fan base, in particular as it relates to your process, using a search firm, all the questions that come with that. Can you come clean and in detail with why the university would go with a search firm when it didn't use one for Coach Narduzzi and came up with great results?
Well, number one, I was hired with a search firm. I believe Coach Narduzzi, there was a piece in that search with Coach Narduzzi. It is the standard of the industry today, and what it does, I guess I would tell you that, as you say, come clean, as though it is something that isn't standard. What it is it gives you an opportunity, particularly with the timeliness of the search, to extend and the feelers, to put the piece together so that you know who's interested and where they sit. The use of a search firm, I would venture, is probably in the neighborhood of 80 to 90% of searches that are done now are done by a search firm. So we were happy to have that process because it helps you move things along. Gives you a pulse, particularly when coaches are in the field, they're playing, when they're still playing. So that was actually a very good opportunity for us to move forward quickly.
What about Todd Turner's connection, including to the coach here? How can you explain that?
Todd Turner's connection, I worked for Todd Turner at Washington. I've used Todd Turner several times for searches. You get familiar with folks that you use and that do a great job and are excellent. And that's exactly what we did to move this forward. You asked a question before that about the fans' reaction. And I'll tell you that I'm delighted to be here because we're going to be above the noise, and you've just met the man that's going to lead our ship. And if you're not impressed with him, then you maybe aren't in the right spot. So we couldn't be more excited about how we're moving forward. The team couldn't be more excited. And today is the first day of the Kevin Stallings era, and I couldn't be, I am absolutely excited. And I think the fans, as they get to know him, will be that way as well. So thank you for the question.
Kevin, your words here. Players whose experience will be rewarding. You'll find out I love my players, treat people in the program the way we want to be treated. Why wasn't Sheldon allowed to transfer to Pitt?
That's something that Sheldon and I have discussed, and the details, quite frankly, are unimportant. I think if we had to do the situation again, things might have been handled a little bit differently. But honestly, that to me is something that's in the past. I've spoken with Sheldon. I've spoken with his family. And I think we're all comfortable with what happened. I think we're all comfortable with where we're at now, and I think we're all comfortable with what things look like for us going forward.
How are the details important when you're talking about character, experience, all of these attributes that you're using?
Because unfortunately, when you run a basketball program, you can't share all the details of everything. It had nothing to do with character. It had nothing to do with there were just some details that, again, anybody that thinks that the head of any organization can stand up before people and give them all of the details of anything is usually misguided, because that's just not the way it goes. I'm sure that's not the way it goes in the media business either. Sure.
Is he allowed to go to any school at Pitt, or was it just Pitt?
He was released to every other school but Pitt. That's correct.
Seems an interesting.
It does. And if you were, if again, there are things that all of us would do differently if we had do-overs in our life, and that might be one that I would do over. But for me to go into specific detail about what happened, I think is useless and certainly not productive for Sheldon nor I. And I'm really much more concerned about him than I am anything else.
Coach, Creighton Raps from Hero Sports. First question is, you were alluding to recruiting. This is really a two-part question. First, how committed are you to recruiting kids from Western Pennsylvania, particularly the Whitfield, because there are some programs out here, prep programs out here this side of the state that won a state title this year?
Would you like me to answer that, or are you going to ask another question, sir?
If you want to answer that first.
All right. I'm very committed to recruiting the very best student athletes that we can find for the University of Pittsburgh, and I would love for all of them to come from Western Pennsylvania. It would perhaps make our recruiting endeavors a little easier, but that's probably not going to happen. But we're going to recruit locally, statewide, and nationally as hard as we can, as effectively as we can.
And second question, sort of similar vein, how committed are you as the head coach to seeing a rivalry renewed between Pitt and West Virginia? Because that was a big rivalry here back in the day, and a lot of fans have been jonesing to see that, for lack of a better way to put it.
Well, I'd have to talk with the team first and see how they felt about that, and I don't want to make any grand proclamations about what needs to happen with the schedule before I have a chance to look at it. So I guess if there's a great desire on the part of our fans and on the part of our players, and maybe on the part of our administration to renew that rivalry, then that would be a possibility.
Kevin, right in front of you. Will Graves, Associated Press. Both you guys mentioned the conversation, why do you want to come to Pitt? Can you get to the Final Four? Last I checked, you can get to the Final Four at Vanderbilt, too. So why leave a program that you mentioned your close relationship with your players after 17 years? You know, you've made your mark there. Why move on? And were you given any indication by that administration about whether you would return? I know you had said after you lost to Wichita State that decision is, quote, out of my hands. So I'm just curious, why leave? And then were you given any notice by the university about whether you would come back in the fall?
I would answer that in two ways. First of all, that decision was out of my hands all 17 years that I worked there. Okay, it was, and my athletic director told me point blank, I want you to coach here as long as you want to coach. And had very recently told me, I don't want to have to hire another basketball coach as long as I'm here, because he's probably a few years from retirement. But you know, sometimes you get to a point, first of all, when you're someplace for 17 years, I think you're going to be there at different times the rest of your life. I think you just feel like, okay, this is probably it. But when I got the first call about this job may be opening, it felt different. It felt, I felt an excitement in my heart, an excitement in my body that I hadn't felt in a long time. And I've had a number of opportunities over the years to coach elsewhere. I loved being at Vanderbilt. I loved, like I said, the people that I coached there and the people that I worked with there. But sometimes there comes a point in your life to where if you don't change, then you're never going to change. And I guess I just kind of determined that I wanted one more opportunity. And so I would say that those are mainly the reasons. And I couldn't be any more excited to be here.
Paul Zeiss for the Post-Gazette. Scott, you had a coach here that you let go or let out of his contract or whatever to leave. Had a lot of success in the ACC. The question that a lot of people have is he had a better resume than the guy you're bringing in, who is not in as good of a league. So I guess you could speak to, you know, what makes you think after talking to him and everything else that it will translate to coming to a much better league, that he will be able to have success. And then if you could answer that too.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. How do we get better? And remember, and with no slight to Vanderbilt, there's a lower ceiling at Vanderbilt from the pool of, that you can recruit from to the emphasis on basketball and likewise. So absolutely, you look at the job he's done in that environment, he's done very, very well. You look at the number of NBA draft picks that he's recruited. You look at the success he's had overall, and yes, it's a different level league, but it also comes with challenges. And one of the things that Coach and I talked about was, yes, there is a wide difference from getting to Final Four from a Vanderbilt or a Pittsburgh because of some of those restraints. So that certainly is part of that.
I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. You know what, I guess I would only respond to that by saying something that I tell my teams a lot, and that is people won't always believe what you say, but they'll always believe what you do. And I'm proud of what we accomplished at Vanderbilt, and presently the ACC is better than the SEC. There have been years where that's not been the case, and it certainly is the case right now. But I'm not, I'm certainly not going to apologize for my record. Jamie obviously had great success, and as I said before, our goal is to try to match that and try to build on it.
Kevin, Tim Benz from Trib Live Radio. Just to follow up on an answer you gave a few moments ago, you said you first got the call alerting you that the job may open up. Can you expand on that a little bit? When were you
not
first?
really, because that was a confidential conversation that I was asked to keep confidential, and honestly, at the time, I can tell you it was from a coaching friend, but I won't disclose who, but just that Jamie was thinking about going to TCU.
Okay, then how were you first formally contacted then, and what was the process? How long did it take you to make the decision? When did you first let Scott know you were coming?
Okay, if you'll forgive me, I have to think a little bit. The last week was kind of fast. I believe the job was offered to me late on Friday, and by the time that we worked out and solidified most of the things that we had to talk about, that probably went into, I'm going to say early on Saturday, maybe midday on Saturday, maybe even later in the afternoon on Saturday. Now that I'm thinking a little more clearly, but that was about the time frame.
Yeah, Kevin, Jim Colony from 93.7, The Fan in the back. You mentioned about everybody likes to play fast, so you want to play fast. But how do you walk that line between running the sort of offense and the kind of sets that you want to run, and then allowing the players a little bit of freedom to do what they think is the right thing to do in the flow of the game?
Well, that's always been kind of the easy part for me, because these guys are here because they're good players. And the most unproductive capacity that you can put a player in my opinion, is when a guy's playing with one eye on the court and one eye on the bench because he's afraid of what the coach is going to say or the coach is going to do. These guys will be allowed to make mistakes. Coaching is coaching. The better players will be allowed to make more mistakes than the guys that might not be as good. Just like they'll be allowed to shoot more than the guys that don't shoot as well. But I've never had a problem relinquishing control of the game to the players. I'll manage the game, and I'll teach them how to manage the game in practice, and I'll rely on them to manage the game during the games. And that's been a formula that I've been comfortable with, and honestly, I learned that more so from Roy Williams than anybody else when I worked for him, and that's just how we like to do it.
Joe Starkey from 93.7 The Fan, the Pittsburgh Trib. I have one question for each man. Scott, Jeff Goodman from ESPN, I believe, reported that Pitt was spurned by a number of candidates before settling on Kevin. Is that accurate?
No, it is not.
Kevin, we'll switch to you.
I hope my answer is that easy.
Recruiting-wise, we heard from Scott and we've heard from others that it could be restrictive at Vanderbilt. So how do you think that'll compare to Pitt? And also the international pool. You seem to have some success with that. Does that translate to Pitt, and how important is that when you don't have a fertile recruiting ground in the immediate vicinity?
Well, I think that my recruiting approach, even when I was at Illinois State, was to think outside the box. It wasn't just going to be high school players. We recruited junior college players. We recruited foreign kids there. I took that same philosophy to Vanderbilt, but the junior college portion of it had to be eliminated. So we had to recruit high school kids, prep school kids, and in some instances foreign kids. So we will look globally. The basketball world has gotten smaller and smaller. We will look wherever we can look without losing sight on those things that are close to us, to where we need to take as good of an advantage as we can. And we'll be very expansive in what we look to do relative to our pool of players that we try to draw from. And I have experience that way. And again, what the recruiting efforts look like in the next 12 months might look different 4 or 5 years from now, because you always learn on the job. I'll learn what the limitations are and the restrictions are, and where we can be successful and maybe where we can't be successful. And hopefully I don't have to learn too many of those things the hard way, but we will look under every blanket to find what we need to find to make Pitt basketball successful.
Alan Saunders, DK Pittsburgh Sports. Two, if I may. First, has a determination been made about Brandon Knight and the rest of the coaching staff? And
I have talked about that a little bit, and I guess my first thought has always been I try to schedule to my team. I don't want to, for instance, a year ago, I overscheduled my group. I had a young group, and I ended up overscheduling them, and I felt terrible about that because it got us off to a little bit of a slow start. This year we scheduled up, Kansas and Baylor and Dayton and Texas and Purdue and St. John's and Wake. Now that those were in a tournament, and neither of them ended up having great years, but they're Power 5 conferences. But I would tell you that our schedule is the reason that we got into the NCAA tournament. I think there were teams that didn't get in because they didn't schedule up. And so my philosophy, which is the question you asked, is I'm going to try to put together a schedule, first, that my players like, second, that our fans will enjoy and support, and third, something that Scott feels good about. And but I've never scheduled for wins. That's not what they want. They don't want us playing a bunch of directional schools game after game after game. And again, as I said, I want to put a schedule together that they like.
Do you like to do home and homes with teams if you can?
Sure. We've pretty much done it all. We've done home and homes. There might be a 2-for-1 that gets slid in there somewhere with somebody, and there's certainly going to be some bye games. I mean, if it were left up to the fans, you would play Arizona, then you'd play Kansas, and you'd play Kentucky, and if you couldn't find anybody good to play, you'd try to play those 3 again. And you have to be intelligent in the way you schedule, but we'll put together a schedule, like I said, that I think people will appreciate and enjoy.
Yeah. Colin Dunlap, Sports Radio 93.7 The Fan. Scott, you had said that that report from ESPN was untrue. How many people were, in fact, interviewed for this position?
It's amazing what flies and what circulates. So that was sort of the group that we interviewed, 5, including one assistant coach. And I'm not going to get into the details of that. I want to protect those that interviewed. I've probably said more than I need to, but that's where it sits. So thanks.
I would like to interject this. I know that there was some sentiment that Scott tried to bring some native Pittsburgh coaches home, and I've talked to a guy in Arizona and a guy in Kentucky if they'd like to come back and be my assistant, but I haven't gotten them to sign on to that yet.
Yeah, Coach. John Harris, Pittsburgh Tribune Review. You mentioned Pitt, potentially Final Four down the line, going into a league, 6 teams in the Sweet 16 this year. Where do you see Pitt fitting into that next year?
Well, I don't see anything because I don't see those other teams yet, and heck, I haven't even seen my team yet. But I can tell you this, from what I heard about an hour ago, this team believes that they can win a championship. So I'm going to do everything I can to support that. And I'm not up here professing that I think we're going to or I think we will. The ACC is obviously the best basketball league in college basketball, which is proven by this NCAA tournament over and over. But a number of people that I've talked to, I did get to see them, as I told the players, I did get to see them one time on film this past year because we played Purdue after they played Purdue, and so I was able to watch that tape. But just put it this way, I'm very excited about this group and their vision for what our team can be, and I'm going to do everything I can as their coach to support that vision.
Kevin, Jerry DePaula, Pittsburgh Tribune Review. Could you talk about some of the coaches you've worked for in the past and the ones that most influenced your style and your personality and how they did that?
Ooh, that's a good question, and I'll try to be brief with my answer. I played for Gene Cady my last 2 years at Purdue. Those were his first 2 years as the coach there. And then I was on his staff for 6 years. In the summer of 1988, Roy Williams went from being an assistant coach at the University of North Carolina to be the head coach at the University of Kansas. He asked me to join his first staff, and I did. 5 years later, he worked his magic and convinced a few athletic directors that I deserved a head coaching opportunity, and I finally settled on the Illinois State University coaching job. Worked for a wonderful guy there by the name of Rick Greenspan, and after 6 years at Illinois State, the Vanderbilt job came open, and it's kind of funny because I was asked why now. The year before I took the Vanderbilt job, the University of Tennessee job was offered to me, and I turned that down. And I'm a person that's pretty in touch with what goes on in my heart. And when Vanderbilt called, I was excited, and I didn't know why. But I went there, I loved it, and honestly, I thought I would be at Vanderbilt for 5 or 6 years because that's how long I'd been every place else. And 17 years later, here we are. But worked for Gene Cady, worked for Roy Williams. Both of them have had immeasurable impact on not only my coaching philosophy and style, but on my life. They taught me that it's much more important to care about the student athlete than it is to care about their play. And I've been seriously amongst the luckiest people that I know of in basketball. My high school coach is in the National Basketball Hall of Fame. I think he won, I think it's like 768 games in 32 years as a high school coach in Illinois. I played for his last team. And I've been influenced by all three of them, and I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't feel their influence, not only in my coaching but in my life.
Dan Sostek from the Pitt News. Obviously in the SEC, you probably haven't scouted Pitt too much. What's your process for familiarizing yourself with each individual player, both on and off the court?
Well, as I mentioned, we'll jump out here on this court as soon as we can, and I'll watch them play some. When the rules allow for, we'll get our skill work in. I'll get to know them better that way, and probably we'll dive into some film and maybe watch some of what's occurred. I'm not always a fan of doing that because I don't like to make judgments on things that maybe shouldn't affect me. So, because honestly, there's probably a guy that's sitting there that didn't have as much of an impact last year as he's going to have next year, and I won't allow my mind to be warped or swayed by what's happened in the past, because the past it really is completely unimportant to me. What's important to me is what happens from this point forward, and again, I know I keep saying this, and I'm sorry for being redundant, but I'm very excited to get out here with these guys.
I've been told one more question, but if I can ask one to each of you. Scott, was Kevin's loyalty to one school a factor that he's not going to look at Pitt as a stepping stone job? Was that an attractive part of his resume?
That's a really good question. It isn't something that I was worried about in terms of that. 17 years in one place, he was ready for another step. I think more importantly was the opportunity that Kevin saw. He was all about the opportunity. And again, that opportunity at Pitt was, in his mind and certainly mine, a better opportunity to advance the program further than he could at Vanderbilt. That was the key. Kevin is a very loyal individual. Wouldn't slight that at all. But in terms of sort of being that being a focus, that wasn't a focus. This is a great job, and people that have sat in this seat have been here for some time and had success, and I feel that way about Kevin.
And for you, Kevin, I know you said you were thankful about your time at Vanderbilt, but would you say that you were professionally frustrated there? Were you looking for a change of scenery? Were you actively searching for other jobs this offseason?
I can tell you that in the 17 years that I was there, I was never actively searching or looking to leave. And I wasn't looking to leave this year. I don't know if you guys paid attention last week or not, but I was fired, I retired, and I was negotiating a settlement, all while I was down in Florida with my family on my daughter's spring break and not having any conversations with anyone about anything. David and I worked together for a long time, and if David was going to fire me, David would have fired me right after the season was over, okay? Instead of sending me a message, hey, get away from your family. You deserve this time. Let's sit down when you get back and visit, okay? I can promise you something. I won't be at Pittsburgh for 17 years. All right, that would make me 72, and I'm sorry, but I hope I'm not here for 3 years either, but I won't be here for 17. But I think in some regards, people might have stopped looking at me because I had been there for so long, because again, there's a point to where the perception is he's not leaving. But I want to make it clear, the decision to be the basketball coach here was not what I was going from, but what I was going to. And I think we have enormous potential here, and the new challenge has invigorated me and excited me, and again, I look very forward to it.
All right, thank you guys. We're actually going to bring Coach's family up. We got a little gift for them as well. Scott, you want to bring them up, another photo op for everybody?
Absolutely. Thank you all. You look best. Right there.